The bright lights of the stage seemed too big for the small, skinny boy who stepped forward in his faded, worn-out clothes. His shoes were scuffed, his shirt slightly too big, and his trembling hands clutched the microphone as if it were the only thing keeping him steady. The vast theater, filled with thousands of people, fell into a restless murmur. Some exchanged doubtful glances, others whispered to each other, wondering if this fragile-looking child could possibly belong on such a grand stage. His eyes darted across the judges' table, then out to the endless sea of faces staring back at him. Fear flickered in his gaze, but beneath it burned something stronger, hope, fragile yet undeniable. For him, this moment was more than just a performance, it was a chance to prove that his struggles, his pain, and his dreams were not invisible. He took a shaky breath, his chest rising and falling as he tried to calm the storm raging inside. Every heartbeat echoed louder than the applause he had always imagined. The microphone shook slightly in his grasp, but he refused to let go. For the first time in his life, the world wasn't rushing past him, it was watching, waiting. And though he felt small, he knew he carried a voice that could fill even the largest of rooms. This was his moment, and deep down, he prayed it would change everything. He stood there under the blinding lights, and when one of the judges gently asked him to tell them about himself, his voice came out soft but steady. He spoke of a life far different from the glittering stage before him. He shared how he grew up in a tiny home with barely enough to survive, where hunger was familiar and comfort was rare. His father was gone, and his mother, though kind and loving, was too weak and often sick, leaving him to carry burdens far too heavy for a child his age. He told them about long days spent on street corners, singing to strangers for coins. Sometimes earning just enough for bread, sometimes nothing at all. Yet even in those moments, music was his companion, his only way of fighting back against despair. With every note he sang on those streets, he dreamed of something more, a day when his voice could lift him out of the shadows and bring hope not only to himself but also to the mother who sacrificed everything for him. The theater was hushed, not a whisper, not a cough, just silence heavy with emotion. Faces in the crowd softened, even the judges leaned in closer, their skepticism melting into empathy. In that instant, the audience didn't see just a poor boy in ragged clothes. They saw a dreamer, a fighter, someone whose spirit refused to be broken. His backstory wasn't just his own, it was a reflection of resilience that touched every heart listening. The moment the music began, a hush swept across the entire theater. The boy closed his eyes, clutching the microphone as though it were the only anchor holding him steady. His first note was soft, almost fragile, but within seconds it bloomed into something extraordinary, clear, raw, and filled with emotion far beyond his years. The sound carried the weight of his struggles, the loneliness of nights spent hungry, and the quiet hope that had always kept him moving forward. The audience froze, as if afraid to even breathe and break the magic. Slowly, tears welled in eyes across the theater. Mothers clutched their hearts, fathers nodded with admiration, and children stared in awe. His voice rose higher, trembling with both pain and beauty, reaching every corner of the hall. It wasn't just a performance, it was a cry from the soul, a story told through song that needed no translation. Even the judges, known for their sharp words and tough criticism, leaned forward in their chairs. One of them lifted a hand to wipe away a tear, unable to hide the effect of his song. With every lyric, he pulled the crowd deeper into his world, until no one saw a poor boy anymore. They saw an artist, a spirit unbroken, a voice destined to be heard. When his final note lingered in the air, silence followed, deep, heavy silence, before the entire theater erupted into thunderous applause, rising to their feet, as if united by the miracle they had just witnessed. The final note faded, and for a brief heartbeat, silence filled the theater. Then, as if a wave had crashed, the audience erupted into thunderous applause. People leapt to their feet, clapping, cheering, whistling, their faces streaked with tears. The boy, overwhelmed, lowered his head, gripping the microphone tightly as though afraid the dream might vanish if he let go. His chest heaved with disbelief, never in his life had he seen so many people standing for him. One of the judges pressed a hand to her heart, her eyes glistening with emotion. She leaned into her microphone and whispered, almost trembling, "That was one of the most beautiful performances I have ever heard." The boy's lips quivered, unsure how to respond. Then suddenly, another judge pushed back his chair and slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. The sound echoed like a shot of destiny, and in an instant, golden confetti rained from above, shimmering in the bright stage lights. The boy fell to his knees, covering his face with his hands as tears spilled freely. The host rushed forward, wrapping him in a warm embrace, holding him as the audience roared even louder. For the first time, the world wasn't ignoring him, it was celebrating him. His voice, born from hardship and pain, had carried him to a moment of triumph that seemed impossible only hours ago. In that shower of golden light, his life was no longer defined by struggle, but by hope and possibility. Golden confetti still floated through the air like a dream that refused to end. The boy stood in the center of the stage, tears streaming down his face, his thin frame trembling under the weight of a moment too big to put into words. The host guided him gently to his feet, holding his shoulders as the audience continued their standing ovation. The boy lifted his eyes, glistening with tears, and whispered softly, "This is for my mom." His voice cracked, but the sincerity in his words reached every heart in the room. The judges rose one by one, clapping with genuine admiration. One leaned into the microphone and said, "You've reminded us all that true talent isn't about wealth, comfort, or privilege. It's about heart, about soul, and you have both in abundance." The crowd cheered louder, echoing agreement. As the boy walked off stage, still brushing confetti from his hair, cameras followed him. He didn't see himself as a star yet, just a son who wanted to give his mother a reason to smile again, a reason to believe that life could change. In that moment, his journey wasn't just about a competition, it was about hope, resilience, and the power of believing in dreams no matter how impossible they seemed. The audience left inspired, reminded that greatness can rise from the most unlikely places. And as the boy disappeared behind the curtains, his story became more than just a performance, it became a symbol of courage, love, and the unshakable human spirit.